Excellent, excellent. It was mute.
Oh, oh, oh. ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं कर्वावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मत् आचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् ॐ गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः ॐ सरस्वती नमस्तुभ्यं वरदे कामरूपिणि विद्यारम्भं करिष्यामि सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा कार्पण्यदोषोपहतः स्वभावः पृच्छामि त्वां धर्मसम्मूढचेताः यश्रेयस्यान्निश्चितं ब्रूहि तन्मे शिष्यस्तेऽहं शाधि मां त्वां प्रपन्नम् ॐ वाङ्मे मनसि प्रतिष्ठिता मनो मे वाचि प्रतिष्ठितम् आविर्मे एधि वेदस्य मा आनीस्तः श्रुतं मे मा प्रहासीः अनेन अधीतेन अहोरात्रान् सन्तता मे ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु मामवतु वक्तारम् अवतु वक्तारम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पक्ष्येमाक्षभिर्जत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैः तुष्टुवाग्वं स्वस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति न पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्ताक्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्ददातु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ अहं वृक्षस्य रेरिव कीर्तिप्रीष्टं गिरिरिव ऊर्ध्व पवित्रो वाजिनीव स्वमर्थमस्मि द्रविणत्वं सवर्सचं सुमेध अमृतोक्षितः इति त्रिशङ्कोर्वेदानुवचनम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः
Narayan, Narayan, everyone. Okay, should we start on Shloka 27? Yeah. Prem, would you like to read the connection?
Speaking of the characteristics of a Rajasic performer, the Lord says,
I'm going to do the chanting today as part of my sadhana. So if I make mistakes, I have the better teacher here who will guide me. Ragi karma phale presuhu.
Ragi karma phale perspur,
Lubdho hinsat mako shuchihi.
lubdo himsa mako suchihi,
Harsha shokan vitta karta.
harshasha shokana vittata,
Vitta karta.
vitta karta,
Rajasa prak prak sorry. Rajasa parikirtitaha.
Rajasa parikirtitataha.
Mary.
Having strong likes or dislikes in action, deeply involved in its results, avaricious, ready to cause suffering to others, having impure habits, given alternatively to jubilation and dejection, such a performer is said to be rajasic.
So here,
Rajas,
just before we continue, so we're talking about um, uh, we talked about the sattvic performer in the previous class. Now we're talking about the rajasic performer, and we're talking about the performer. What does a rajasic, tamasic, and a rajasic performance mean? So rajasic and tamasic, sorry, rajasic and sattvic. The one thing for us to be aware of is the action might be exactly the same. It is the attitude, it is the bhav with which we do that particular action that makes it sattvic or rajasic, right? So it's a mental state that we need to become aware of. And that's what this shloka will try and highlight.
the rajasic performer, a comparison of the characteristics of a sattvic performer with those of a rajasic, one would show that while the quantum of the effort put in the action by both is the same, a change of only the mental attitude gives rises to the following faults in the rajasic performer. Number one, like and dislike for the action. The rajasic performer undertakes an action not because it is a bounden duty, but because of a personal liking. An unpleasant duty is avoided and a pleasant task is gladly undertaken, even if it is unnecessary. Two, involvement in the result. Again, an action undertaking if it brings in worldly gains. To achieve the result somehow, there is no hesitation to employ even unfair and unrighteous means. Number three, avaricious. This is no contentment with the result of actions, and there is a strong desire of getting more and more. Unmindful of suffering to others. To gain worldly desires, the performer does not hesitate to make others suffer. To such a person, self-interest is always supreme. Impure habits. With the mind always restless with desires impure and solvently habits take control. Jubilation and dejection. The performer is jubilant in success and dejected in failure, and so loses the equipoise of the mind. Thus, with a rajasic frame of mind, a person engages in a multiplicity of actions for the fulfillment of worldly desires. Such a mind is always full of tensions and worries. With such a state of mind, no one can even think of pursuing any yoga discipline for self-realization.
So while the starting point of every rajasic performer is desire, is like or dislike. So you may have a duty to, for example, discipline your child, right? But you don't like doing it because it makes you feel uncomfortable. You're conflict averse. You don't want to be the tough parent, all of that. And so now you're giving into your likes and dislike and not doing your duty. That's a Rajasic performer, for example, right? Um, and the thing with choosing your performance and your actions based on likes and dislikes, it essentially means one, that you're constantly putting more mental effort in every action that you have to do. You are extolling more energy in that particular action that you have to do. And third, you're creating more prarabdha for yourself because you're not doing it out of your own duty, right? And as a Rajasic person who starts their journey or starts every action with their desire, they become very involved in the result because they don't care about the desire of the effort. No one has a desire for the effort. No one has desire for the process. The desire is always result. And when your desire becomes the result of an action, then you don't focus on the right way to do it with the right bhav. You focus on the quickest, most convenient. You look at it from a perspective, how do I just get that end result? Whether I do it properly or improperly, it doesn't matter. And that's what a Rajasic performer is. And that's where point number 4 comes in, that it is unmindful to suffering of others, because you sometimes justify saying that the result justifies the means. And because we're so result focused, we're so involved in the end result, we sometimes knowingly or unknowingly cause suffering to others and we justify it. Right? And the scary part with this is, when the mind is chasing desires, the mind is constantly restless, because any result is experienced in the future. Any desire that you have is a state of mind where your mind is in the future. And that creates restlessness. That creates tensions and worries, as mentioned below, right? And that multiplicity of actions for the fulfillment of worldly desires, such a mind is always full of tensions and worries. So if you find yourself feeling anxiety, anger, irritation, stress, constantly worrying about something, then you know you're being a Rajasic performer. And that is just a mechanism for you to become aware, take a step back and reconsider, how do I convert this particular action that I'm doing to align it with as a Sattvic performer? How do I bring Bhagwan in? How do I bring my duty in? Right? That's the difference between a Rajasic and a Sattvic performer. Thank you. Okay. Hi, Anita. Would you like to read the next connection?
Yes. The Lord next speaks of the characteristics of the tamasic performer.
Ayuta prakrita stabdha
Ayuta prakrita sapta
Shatonesha kriti kolasaha
satonetra kriti lakshaha
kolasaha
kolakshaha
vishadidhir vishadidhirda sutrichaha
vishadidirga suti disha
karta tamas uchate.
karta tamasa uchyate. Having uncontrolled impulse, the performer who is vulgar, obstinate, willing, given to robbing the livelihood of others, lazy, cheerless, and a dweller is said to be the tamasic. The
So,
tamasic performer.
yeah. So now we're going to study the characteristics of a tamasic performer, right? We've done Sattvic, we've done Rajasic. Now we'll do Tamasic. And let's be really clear, all of us are all three. So this is not a shloka to be read thinking of others, but more importantly, read on how we approach certain tasks in our life with this approach.
The tamasic performer. Such a performer has the following characteristics. With uncontrolled impulses, having no control over animal-like impulses, the performer is unsteady in work. Vulgar. With uncontrolled impulses, the performer does not even think it necessary or proper to exercise any such control. As such, the vulgar tendencies are shown in behavior.
So the first 2 points, right? Uncontrolled impulses and vulgar behavior, they are very much go hand in hand. When you have uncontrolled, it's like the slippery slope. You allow yourself, I'll give you an example. You allow yourself, suppose you don't have any sweets, right? Suppose a month you don't have any sweets, or 2 months, or 6 months, or a year you don't have any sugar. Then you allow yourself one piece of sugar. What happens? It typically tends to want you to have more sugar and more sugar and more sugar. And the next thing you know, you're back to a slippery slope. People who've worked really hard, disciplined for 4 or 5 months, they come back to it And then they, even if they've lost weight or whatever, then they come back to it and they've regained all their old weight, right? And that is not being able to control that tamasic impulse. Same thing is true for alcohol. And what the vulgar part refers to is the extreme version of that behavior. If you don't have that discipline, then it becomes a very slippery slope. So I remember with Vedant, for example, as a parent, sometimes when you're disciplining, you tend to get angry. And if you allow yourself even once to, in anger, hit him even slightly, then the impulse to do it again increases and you justify it, right? And that's what this tamasic behavior does. It's a slippery slope where once you've justified that first small action, it then justifies the second and the third and the fourth. And the next thing you know is you turn around, you're like so far away from the line. Please continue.
Obstinate, um, never open to reason and not subscribing to any righteous principles. Such a person is obstinate to the core. Willing for the fulfillment of impulsive desires, such a person is always ready to use dishonest and crooked means, robbing the livelihood of others. Such a person does not hesitate to rob the livelihood of others, even for a petty reason, or for not fulfilling illegitimate demands. Lazy. The tamasic performer lacks the dynamism of the rajasic performer and the epipoise of the sattvic one. Um, on the other hand, physical comforts take precedence even over duties. Cheerless, always complaining of the behavior of others and looking only at the darker side of things. The tamasic person is full of melancholy and dejection. Waddler, being unsteady and lazy, such a person is always postponing even pressing calls of duty.
So let's cover some of these one by one. So the last one, dawdler. Dawdler is basically procrastination. People who tend to procrastinate. And I think all of us will agree that we all procrastinate. We probably procrastinate on very important things like filing taxes, like doing expenses, like important work, long emails to write. We tend to procrastinate, even though that is our duty, right? And all of this, I would say, a lot of it is connected to number 6, which is being lazy. A tamasic performer lacks the dynamism of a rajasic performer and the equipoise of a sattvic one. And the reason why this laziness creeps into our life is because the initial duty that we do, most of the duty that we do is rajasic, as a rajasic performer. So our energy dwindles. So some days you come and say, right, oh, I'm low energy today. I just don't have the energy. It's because you've been performing as a rajasic performer. So now that you have low energy, now you're justifying yourself to be lazy and then procrastinate, which is be the dawdler. Right? That's how all this is connected. So when we find ourselves in low energy phases, right? I'm not saying it's not okay to take a break, but it's very important for us to use that VVGP to reflect. Why did I lose energy? Where was my mental makeup and my direction focused? Was I being a Rajasic performer? Was I being a Sattvic performer? Was I attached to the result? Or is it just physical exertion in which I should just sleep and get recharged for the next day? Or is it that I've not eaten lunch and I just need to get some energy and I'll be focused? Right? That's how we arrest ourselves from finding and allowing ourselves to procrastinate and allowing ourselves to be lazy. Cheerless here, the other way to look at this, not the other way, the synonym is a person who's pessimist, who always sees the glass empty. No matter what they do, no matter where they are, no matter what you do, you're always like, oh yeah, but I've always had better. Someone gives you a piece of say, cake, chocolate cake. You have a bite. Cake is good, but you're like, you know what? I've had better. The cake from that other bakery is actually nicer than this. So instead of enjoying what you have, you're just a cheerless person. You're a pessimist person who's constantly looking at the negative in everything. And I think all of us can agree that we've all been this person. We all are this person in certain versions, especially with our kids, especially with our spouses. Right? So number 3 is also I wanted to talk about obstinate, right? What's very interesting is the tamasic energy that we have, the tamagun that comes in, it is nobody else can ever tell you that you are being this person, and you will never agree to it. You will always justify it. You'll always justify your procrastination. You will always justify your laziness. You will always justify doing something, and you will have high sounding principles, just like Arjun did in the beginning. The only way for you to work on your tamas is your own sadhana. Study and reflection. Study and reflection. It is only you who can show yourself the true mirror. Right? Because all of this is so subtle. It's only you who really know whether you're being tamasic or ratsik or sattvic. But externally, people might think, oh, you're a really good person. But internally, you may be in hell. Yeah. Okay. Are you okay? Yeah. She is quite unwell, as you can tell. Okay. Bhageshri, would you mind reading connection?
Yeah. In Shloka 18, the Lord had described the three factors responsible for originating an action as knowledge, object of knowledge, and the knower. He had also described the factors which go to compose an action as the equipments, the actual performance, and the performer. Describing the effect of the three gunas on these factors, he has so far dealt with the knowledge, actual performance, and performer, which includes the knower. Among the mental equipments or means of performance of actions, intellect and fortitude are the foremost, as they are the prime faculties which enable a performer of actions to be resolute and persevering in effort. Initiating the description of the influence of the gunas over these two mental faculties, the Lord says.
So now we're going subtler. So we first talked about knowledge, object of knowledge, and knower. And we've seen all three of these elements under the gunas, how they perform, right? So we've discussed about performance, but now Bhagwanji is saying performance alone is not the influencer. It is even subtler than that. It is the intellect and the fortitude that define the performance. So it's no longer your action. It's definitely not the action. It's definitely not the knowledge. It is definitely not the performer. He's saying it's even subtler than that we need to focus on, which is the intellect and fortitude. And the next few shlokas, we will study what intellect is, buddhi, and dhriti. Dhriti is fortitude. Fortitude, another word that is easier for us to relate to is perseverance. Yeah, that's how we use it in common lingo. Fortitude is perseverance. So we will study fortitude and intellect from again the guna perspective. Oh, I have to read. Buddhi bhedam dhritescheva
Buddhir-bhedam dhriteshchaiva
gunatastrividham shrunu
gunastastridhi-vidham shृणु
masheshena
प्रोच्यमानमशेषेण
parthakatvena dhananjaya.
पृथक्त्वेन धनञ्जयः. O Dhananjay, Now hear from me the three divisions of buddhi, intellect, and dhriti, fortitude, respectively, depending on the three gunas, which I shall explain fully and in all their detail. Buddhi, intellect, and dhriti, fortitude. These two prime mental faculties must be understood clearly. Of these two, buddhi, intellect, is the determinative faculty with which a person chooses between several alternatives available at the moment. The choice of an alternative by the intellect depends on the particular guna which holds the intellect under its sway at that moment. Dhriti, fortitude, is that faculty which helps a person to hold fast to a particular course determined by the intellect. The firmness of the attitude depends on the quality of fortitude which a person has under the influence of the guna which is on the ascendant at the moment.
Yeah. So, like I mentioned, now we're going slightly subtler, right? If you remember the Shrishti Chakra, right? You had intellect, and below the intellect, you had mind, body, ego, right? So we are familiar with the concept that the intellect should be directing the mind, should be directing the ego and the body and the senses, right? It is the intellect that stores the knowledge and makes that determinative faculty. This is the right path. That's the intellect. Now Bhagwanji is saying that there is another component within the intellect that resides within the intellect called dhriti, which is fortitude. Okay, he's saying dhriti rides inside the intellect, and the reason why you might have the right knowledge to make the right decision, but you don't have the right fortitude to implement that decision. So all of us have read the Gita. All of us study these principles. But the moment the satsang gets over, we go back in the real world, we find it very hard to implement these principles. That's partly because our intellect is not sharpened in that scenario to see what the right principle is. But sometimes in the scenario, we can see that this is the right principle, but we're unable to implement that principle. And that's where dhriti comes in. That's when you need the fortitude to be able to go and execute the decision that your intellect has made. So another way to visualize this is you have intellect and you have reins, right? Like the chariot, you have those reins that control the mind, body, ego, right? So intellect is holding the reins to direct it, but the reins that are connected is the fortitude. So if your reins are not strong enough, then they will break. So even though your intellect knows what to do, your ego will run away and do what it wants. And that's what fortitude is. And the whole thing is that both fortitude and intellect are within us and can be trained and can be redirected. And now that's the other thing that we will study. How do we strengthening our intellect? We know we study the scriptures. We will also talk about how do we strengthen our fortitude. Okay. Nana, you want to read?
Explaining
Sorry, you want to
explain,
Yeah.
explaining the three types of intellect, the Lord first elucidates the sattvic intellect.
Pravatim cha nivritam cha
Pravrittim cha nivrittim cha
karya karye bhaya bhaye
karya karye bhaya bhaye
bandham moksham cha ya veti
bandham moksham cha ya veti
buddhi sa partha satviki.
buddhi sa partha satviki. The intellect which comprehends clearly the paths of pravritti and nivritti, duty and what is not duty, fear and fearlessness, bondage and liberation is said to be sattvic, O Partha. Sattvic intellect. Two words, pravritti and nivritti, have been used in the first line of the shloka. Pravritti means engaging in actions suiting the various ashramas of or stages of life as ordained by the scriptures. Nivritti is renouncing actions. Both these paths can lead to self-realization with clear adherence to either of the two, strictly in accordance with the scriptural precepts. The Lord calls that intellect to be sattvic, which is capable of determining which path to follow. Similarly, the sattvic intellect is able to comprehend clearly what is duty at any particular time and what is not. Fear is an agitation of mind caused by an apprehension of what one holds to be unfavorable. The sattvic intellect enables determination of what is unfavorable in reality and what is not. Similarly, it helps one to decide the causes of bondage and the ways to attain liberation while living in the world.
So the first thing we're looking at now is intellect. And within intellect, we're looking at what is sattvic intellect, right? Of course, out here, it's very clear that the first thing to understand with sattvic intellect is being able to determine what is duty and what is not duty. If you're deluded about what is duty and what is not duty, then it very quickly becomes rajasic, because you're now choosing to do actions based on your likes and dislikes, not duty, right? So the first thing that the sattvic intellect focuses on is to do an action based only on duty. As karma yogis, we have, as we've discussed in the past, we have 4 stages of life, right? And that's what is called pravritti, that we have to determine what is the duty based on the 4 stages of life. So right now we're at the grahas stage. It is my duty to direct and take care and bring my son up with the right value system. But at the ashram stage of life, if my son is 35, 40, living somewhere else, it's no longer my duty to worry for that person. It's no longer my duty to try and control his environment or relationship or any aspect of his life, because my duty is over. But in our society and the way we have grown up, we find it very hard to let go, because we've built attachment through likes and dislikes rather than performing the act out of duty. And that is sattvic intellect, right? And that's what leads to bondage and liberation. If you do not operate from sattvic intellect, you will create more bondage, just like I gave you with that example, as in ashram stage of life, where you get attached to your children and you're unable to let go. That is a bondage that you experience. But that bondage, then the subtle version we carry on for our next life. And the liberation is knowing that, I finished my duty. Now the results and the consequences and everything else is him, is God. Right? That is sattvic intellect. Sattvic intellect is knowing that you have the same energy, you have the same Bhagwan inside of you as your son or your child. So if you just do your duty in the right manner, then as the child grows bigger, Bhagwanji will take care of him the same way he takes care of you. Just like you have come to Gita through a series of circumstances, right, that got you to pick up this book and reflect and think about life, Bhagwanji will do it to their son as well. As long as you've taught him the right values, you have built that curiosity in him, you have turned his head towards Bhagwanji and the Tattva Gyan. If you didn't, then, of course, then those are the consequences of your action and his action. So you will create more bondage as he suffers. Right? That is sattvic intellect, knowing that you did your duty and then letting go and then focus on the next duty. And your duty is determined by the stage of your life. Okay, and I think the fear part we can talk about. Uh, we've shared this in the past also. Fear stems from desire. Fear stems from not being able to achieve what you wanted to achieve in terms of the result. Fear stems from not wanting to experience something unfavorable. That's what fear stems from. So with sattvic intellect, you don't worry about the result. You're just doing your duty. So you become, or you come into a state of fearlessness. Every time there is fear, you reconnect using that intellect to Bhagwanji and give it to him. And you focus on moksha, you focus on liberation, you focus on being equipoise, equanimity. That's your state of being, always. That's the state of being you try to achieve, always, in sattvic intellect. Ritu, you want to read the next?
Taking up the Rajasic intellect next, the Lord says,
Yaya dharmamam dharmancha
Yaya dharmam dharmam cha
karya cha karyameva cha
karyam cha karyameva cha
ayathapa, sorry, ayathava patrijan.
Ayathavat prajanati.
Can you say?
Ayatha
Ayatha
vat
vat
prajanati.
prajanati. Ayathavat prajanati
ayathavat ayathavat prajanati
buddhi sa partha rajasi.
buddhi sa partha rajasi. O Partha, the intellect which is not capable of discerning correctly what is righteous and what is unrighteous, and also what ought to be done and what ought not to be done, is Rajasic. The Rajasic intellect. Under the influence of Rajogun, the intellect becomes incapable of discerning clearly what is righteous and what is not. Similarly, it is unable to determine clearly what is duty and what is not. When Rajogun is on the ascendant, accumulation of worldly enjoyments is regarded as the sole aim of life. In that mental state, what helps in such an accumulation is regarded as being righteous and an act of bounden duty. Gradually, the line of demarcation between what is proper and what is improper vanishes. Rajagun leads to suffering in the end. Under its influence, the mind remains disturbed and knows no peace. When these symptoms appear, it is time to become cautious and inculcate sattvic traits, which alone lead to happiness and peace of mind.
So, you know what the greatest suffering is? The greatest suffering is the indecision that we sometimes sit in, because that creates so much agitation. And that is Rajasic intellect. Both the decision that you're making, when it's right and wrong, when it's black and white, it's fairly easy to make. All of us have trained our intellect to make that judgment. But in the gray area, we find it very hard to make that decision. And that gray area, when we have to make that decision, that's where we experience the most amount of anxiety, stress, sleepless nights, wake up in the middle of the night with chintan. Why is this happening? Why is it not happening? How should I do this? How should I do that? Oh my God, I have to do this. Right? All of that is Rajasic intellect. You've not yet moved your activities with Sattvic intellect. That is just an observation for you to become aware that Rajasic intellect is on the rise, because you're unable to see things and do things as per duty. And with Rajasic intellect, it's very clear, right? I think the one thing we have to be aware of is the Rajasic intellect focuses on worldly achievements and enjoyments, sansaric achievements and enjoyments. And all of us, I think all of us here, apart from Prem, who've brought up in India, right? I can only speak with confidence from India. All of us have been trained in exactly the same way. Become an engineer, become a doctor, because you'll get a job, then you'll make money, then you'll be happy. You don't study, you won't be able to get a job, you will be poor, you won't be happy. We equate so much of our conversation in society to money and happiness. And that is our Rajasic intellect. We devote so little conversation around what is my duty and how do I execute that. Right? And so when we as children were trained in this way, or we were exposed to the world in this way, we make no mistake, we have Rajasic intellect deep inside of us. Bhar bhar ke. And that's what we need to work upon. Because we do love the sansar. We do like all the worldly things the sansar has to offer. We all would like extra money. We all want bigger jobs, bigger responsibility. But for what purpose? We all want to network with Barack Obama. We all want all of this, right? For what purpose? Purpose of life is just one, it's moksha. And the purpose of your duty is for you to carry out your duty in such a way so that you don't create prarabdha and bondage, so that you can achieve liberation. That's it. But the Rajasic intellect is the delusioner. It will create lots of stories around it, lots of justifications on why it's good for you. Why it's good for you to do more, why it's good for you to do this and do that. Rather than focus on, is this my duty? Is this my prime responsibility? And executing it based on that. Great. Who's not read? Prem, have you read? Prem's read. Okay. Smita, are you there? Are you good to read?
I am, but I'll need another 10 minutes to reach. So once I reach, I'll be able to read.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Visalakshi, can you read?
Yeah.
Okay.
Connection. Describing the characteristics of tamasic intellect, the Lord says,
Adharma dharma mitiyaha
Adharmam, adharmam, adharmatiyaha,
manyate tamasavrataha
Manyate tamasavrataha, savratada,
sarvarthana viparitanscha. I didn't say it right. Say it. Okay. Sarvathan vipiritanscha
Vipritanchasa, chansasa,
tanscha
tascha,
vipiritanscha
Viparitancha,
buddhi sa partha tamasi
Buddhi tasa partha tamasi. O Partha, the intellect which being clouded by delusion regards unrighteous as righteous, and similarly in other matters also has a perverted outlook, is said to be tamasic. The tamasic intellect, in the case the intellect is totally darkened by delusion, as the consequence it regards unrighteous as righteous and vice versa. It has a similar pivoted sense in all matters. There is no dearth of people in the society who suffer from such a pivoted intellect and who empathically say that that these days dishonesty and falsehood hold sway. Such people find righteousness unprofitable. If ever such a feeling enters the mind, it is an indication of onslaught of the tamoguna in the intellect. This can be backed by a study of the scriptures and by seeking the guidance of sagas and seers. Otherwise, tamaguna could keep on rising, causing pain and suffering in this life, and result in a birth in lower forms of creations in the hereafter.
Yeah. So tamas intellect, right? Intellect that is shrouded with tamas. Most of us will again say, no, it's not relevant to us. We're not this person. We're definitely more Rajasic and Sattvic. But something that I mentioned earlier for you to be aware of is when we are very steeped in Rajasic, we cross that line over to Tamas without even realizing. Once you go into that habit of focusing on the end result, then you very quickly become into a habit of justifying the means to get that end result. Once you get into that habit, then it doesn't matter. It all becomes a gray area for us, right? I'll give you an example. It's a corporate example, but there is a client, right? That client used to buy a product from us, which was proprietary technology. Everybody was aware of it. And this client's a large client. They're like probably $300-400 million in revenue, large business, etc. But their nature of being as a company is such that they like to kind of be bullies as clients. And so what they did is they basically reverse engineered the product and released it in the market. And this is where I feel that while they're doing Rajasic behavior, their main intention was just to maximize money, maximize effort. And now they have deluded their own business principles and value system, etc., reverse engineered, released in the market, and now there's legal lawsuit with them. Right? And that's how Tamagun takes over. We don't realize it. We justify it. We are so focused on the end result that we allow ourselves to make these wrong judgment calls. And the only way for you to recorrect it is by directing your intellect to the scriptures. By reading, by reflection, by satsang. Or seek guidance of sages and seers if you are stuck, if you are unsure. Right? Without that, it's not going to happen. Nobody else will tell you in your life. Nobody else will be able to point out. I will actually tell you, if somebody points it out to you, you will be excellent at justifying it. Excellent. Just like Arjun was in chapter 1, he was excellent at justifying his actions and his thought process with very high sounding principles of why he should not fight the war. Because his intellect was completely shrouded by Rajas and Tamas. He had no discernment of his duty. And that's where this Gita starts. But Bhagwanji does not start speaking till he drops his bow and asks Bhagwanji, what should I do? I am clouded. I am unsure. I feel I do not have the answer. So I surrender to you. That's the start of Gita. So for you to work on your Tamagun and your Rajas, it has to be you who takes that first step and surrenders and admits that you do not know. And it is through the Gita, through the chapter 18, when we come to the end, that Bhagwanji says, now you have the ultimate knowledge, you choose. And his intellect goes back to being sattvic, and he carries out his duty regardless of how he feels about the end result or what it has to take from him. Right? And that's the same journey that we are on. And yeah, I think the last line, we've discussed this many times, that an intellect that is seeped in Tamagun, the consequences of that action will have to be faced when you go back into next life in lower forms. In lower forms, we are well aware, they never have the chance to attain moksha. You need to have intellect, consciousness, dhriti to be able to attain moksha. Lower forms can only chase their senses, their innate nature. That's it. They can only chase their innate desire. Any questions? I feel like. All right. All right. So we'll go back to you, Kavita, if you can read the connection.
After discussing the effects of three gunas on the intellect, the Lord takes up their effect on fortitude, which is the other mental equipment for performing actions. Speaking of sattvic fortitude, the Lord says,
So we talked about it earlier, right? The two subtle aspects that direct the performer is intellect and fortitude, right? So we talked about now the intellect, what it looks like when sattva, rajas, and tamas is on ascendancy. Now we will study and understand what fortitude is, the role it plays, and how it behaves under the three gunas, right? So for us to become aware where our fortitude is. धृतयायया धार्यते
धृतियायया
धृतियायया धार्यते
धार्यते
मनः प्राणे इन्द्रिया क्रियाः
मन प्राणे इन्द्रिया क्रियाः
योगेन व्यभिचारिण्या
योगेन व्यभिचारिण्या
धृति सा पार्थ सात्विकी.
धृति सा पार्थ सात्विकी. The dhriti with which the functions of the mind, senses, and the vital power are kept under control through unadulterated yoga discipline is called sattvic or partha. Sattvic dhriti. The activities of a person spring from the functioning of the mind, senses, and the vital power. Their functioning can be kept under control by unswavering adherence to the yoga discipline. The firmness of the adherence is made possible only by sattvic dhriti. If the mind is held firm in this manner, it develops the natural tendency of study of scriptures, religious communion, worship, and singing prayers of the Lord. It is always possible for a person to inculcate sattvic dhriti by these means.
So first, let's understand what sattvic dhriti is. Sattvic dhriti is the ability to focus and concentrate on your task at hand. It is the ability to focus and concentrate to do your duty with the correct manner. And all of us at some point have reflected upon and realized that we lose attention, we lose focus, and all of us at some point know, culturally at least, if not practiced, that meditation is a very good way to build that sattvic dhriti. Right? That's what we've all heard of. If you meditate, you will be able to focus better. And that's what attracts a lot of people initially to start meditation. And that's a very strong tool to build your sattvic dhriti. Right? And out here it also says for you to build your sattvic dhritis, religious scriptures, singing prayers, bhajan, worship, all of this helps you focus. I mean, not only strengthen your intellect, but also strengthens your dhriti, your fortitude to be able to do what is right. Focus and do what is right. Smith, I see you're back.
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So maybe you can read the connection.
Sure. The Lord next speaks of Rajasic Dhriti.
Yaya tu dharma kamartha
Yaya tu dharma kamartha
adhruntya dharyate arjuna.
adhyun Artha.
Yeah.
Adhyu dhartyate Arjuna.
Prasangena falakankshi.
Prasangena falankankshi.
Dhritti sa partha rajasi.
Dhriti sa partha rajasi. O
Yeah.
Arjuna, yeah. O Arjuna, the dhriti with which a person adheres to moral, desire fulfilling, or economic activity with the hope for achieving some worldly gain is said to be rajasic. Rajasic dhriti. The scripture speaks of fourfold attainments of human life: moral excellence, economic betterment, fulfillment of desires, and spiritual sublimation. The fortitude with which one adheres to a yoga discipline for spiritual sublimation has been described as sattvic dhiti. The adherence to the remaining three attainments with the desire of some worldly gain is said to be rajasic. In fact, even these three attainments can be made stepping stones to liberation by inculcating a selfless and dedicated attitude. In that case, they become useful aids for spiritual attainments. But when adherence to them is debased with a desire for enjoyment, the fortitude for such an adherence becomes rajasic. A person with such an adherence engages in moral activities not for liberation but for fame or for gaining some social advantage. Such a person strives for fulfillment of passionate desires for the sake of deriving pleasures from them. When working for economic gains, the aim is only personal enjoyment and not help to others.
So, Rajsik Dhriti, let me give you some examples, right? This is the fortitude that it takes for you to do an action to achieve worldly gain. So, for example, you train for a marathon, right? The fortitude it takes, and it takes a tremendous amount of fortitude to be able to run 42 kilometers, right? Months and months, years of practice, training your body, training your mind, directing it, getting in shape. But a lot of times you end up doing that task because you want to look good, you want people to praise you, you want that as your identity, you want to achieve that high, that runner's high, that so to speak. So the whole question is the purpose with which you do a particular action. And that's what Sattvic, Rajsik Dhriti looks like. Rajsik Dhriti is what we use to finish most of our tasks at work. But the nature of Rajsik Dhriti is such that when you finish your work, you feel absolutely drained. Then you have nothing else left to be able to go and do the next task and the next task. So you're like, I need a vacation. I need a break. I cannot take care of my kid anymore. You take care of it. Right? All of that comes in because you are operating from Rajsik Dhriti. You're focused on using that fortitude that Bhagwanji has given you. All of us have it, right? But we're using it just for worldly desire. And we get that feedback, great, we feel good. We don't get that feedback, we lose energy. We don't get adulation, we don't get recognition, we don't get acknowledgement, we lose energy. Now we don't have motivation for the next task because my boss did not give me a raise. I don't have motivation for the next task because somebody else took credit for the work that I did. That is all Rajsik Dhriti. You've been using that as a way to get things done. Oh, if I do this, I'll get a $5,000 bonus. Let's do it. I have all this energy now. I have all this ability to go and focus and get things done because of that one carrot. I did it. I didn't get the carrot. Dhriti gone. Fortitude is now gone. We're back to square one. Now, God forbid, you'll have tamasic dhriti that will come in. And that's how we allow VVGP to play with ourselves. Instead of us having control of our intellect and our fortitude and our dhriti, we allow VVGP to pull and prod. And when we allow for that to happen, chances are 90% of the time we're just doing Rajsik Dhriti because we know it works to gain a particular object. That's it. We know it works because somebody will praise me and I feel good about that. I want that praise. And that's how we are trapped with Rajasic Dhriti. Amazing. Okay, I think we can easily do one more. Let me just. Okay. Prem, would you help us read now?
Connection. Describing the characteristics of a tamasic dirti, the Lord says,
Yaya swapan bhayam shokam
Yaya swapam bayam shokam
vishadam madamevacha
vishadam madame vacha
sorry. Na vimunchati dumedha
na vimunchati durmeda
Dhriti sa partha tamasi.
riti sa parta tamasi. The dirty with which a mentally corrupt person does not abandon sleep, fear, grief, gloom, and also arrogance is said to be tamasic or partha. Tamasic fortitude. A human being is equipped with two divine endowments for attainment of the goal of human life, self-realization. These endowments are time and energy. This shloka describes how adherence to the mental debasement due to tamasic fortitude is not forsaken, leading to a grave misuse of these two extremely valuable endowments. Time has three divisions: the present, the future, and the past. A person with a tamasic dirti wastes the present in sleep and indolence. Fears for the future cling to the mind, which is always full of apprehensions about some adverse occurrence. For the past, the mind is full of grief and disappointments. The irony is that none of the above feelings is an innate constituent of human nature. However, due to the intensity of tamasic dirti, the mind firmly refuses to forsake them. For the other valuable endowment, energy, has such a person has a similar outlook. Due to mental corruption, such a tamasic person never has a correct assessment of energy or strength. Sometimes such a person's mind is assailed by grave doubts about the strength to perform bounden duties. Such a mind then suffers from utter helplessness and with a feeling of self-pity. At other times, arrogance and self-conceit fill the mind with the notion of being all-powerful. Both these attitudes make such a person incapable of correct assessment due to mental corruption. It is important to note that the sattvic and rajasic dhritis, the Lord uses the word adhere. But for tamasic fortitude, he has used the words does not abandon. The reason is that tamasic dhriti is negative in character and is born of mental corruption.
So I I find this shloka and this particular statement very powerful, right? That Bhagwanji has given us as a human life two endowments, time and energy. That's it. We have a limited amount of time and we've been given energy for during that time that we are here. That's it. Those are our two greatest endowments. One of them doesn't exist, we don't exist. We have a limited time and limited energy. So the question is, what do we want to use this limited time and limited energy for? Do we want to use this limited time and limited energy to chase, run around and acquire as much as we can? Like a kid in the candy store trying to grab as much candy as they can in 2 minutes? Do we want to use this limited time and limited energy just pleasing our senses like an animal would? Or do we want to use this limited time and limited energy to attain moksha and be forever happy and at peace? Because that is the nature of Bhagwanji. Right? That's the only question that we have to ask. What do we want to do with our limited time and limited energy? A person who has tamsic dhriti has a great way of squandering both. So the way they squander time is by not being in the present. So the moment your thoughts go worrying about the results in the future, your thoughts go anxious or trying to acquire more things in the future, then you're no longer in the present, which means you've wasted your time. And if your thoughts go reliving the past on how amazing you were, or how bad you were, or being self-critical, or being judgmental, or replaying a story in your head of a situation that happened 5 years ago. How could she say this? How could my mother do this? How did my mother say this? Again, you've wasted time. You've squandered away time. And both of these states of mind, you and I have experienced, we experienced for most hours of our day. And what Bhagwanji is saying, that ability that allows your mind to go to the past and the future is tamsic dhriti. And you need to abandon it. And the way to abandon it is come back to the present. Use the time you have now to get focused on now, because that is the only reality and that is the only way you can come back to being sattvic. And that's why Nam Jap and all is very powerful tools to get your mind to the present. And the second way that he highlights, the second endowment, which is energy, right? A person would have a similar outlook with his energy, where the mind plays a role where you constantly tell yourself you cannot do it. I will not be able to achieve it. It's better, oh, I should not do it, let somebody else do it. Or it's even the other way around. Oh, I'm amazing, I can do this easily. It's for you to practice. But I'm amazing, I don't need Gita. You do it. मैं तो sorted हूँ भाई. The arrogance. That, and I'm sure all of us know people who have subscribed to that level of thought, right? That, oh, I'm actually perfect. I'm amazing. I'm very happy. It's others who need it. That is all tamsic fortitude. That is all dhriti that is sitting, is shrouded in tamas, that you're unable to even accept I can become a better version of myself. Simple as that. You're unable to even break from that character that says this book has lasted 4,000 years, 3,500 years, whatever it is. It's universal truths because it's lasted the test of time. There must be something in it that I can learn to become a better version of myself. No, you'll close this book and say, I know better. Yeah, the book is good. It's helped me achieve certain things, but rest I know better. That is tamasic fortitude. That inertia that allows you to move on a particular path without redirecting it to the right area. All right. I think we should stop here. I hope we recorded it. Yeah. Okay. Should we do takeaways? I think Tuvina's gone and she's not feeling well. Should we do takeaways? Actually, just give me 1 second. Let me see if Tuvina wants to join for takeaways. I think she's in the washroom. Okay. We do takeaways, guys?
Start. So for me, my takeaway was that the difference between Rajasic and Sattvic is all about the mindset and the bhav, and and the fact that worrying about results and worldly desires is filled with tensions and worries. So fearing about what is happening in the future and fixated on that is something it is a mindset that I want to get rid of, and not living in the present. And because the reason why it's called present, it's a gift from God. So focusing on that, and and the fact that I have a limited amount of energy and time. So how I utilize it is very important. So again, important to live in the present and not worrying about the future. That's my take.
Amazing.
I'll go next. My takeaway was that how it's a very slippery slope between Rajasic, Tamasic, intellect, and fortitude. And I think the last shloka was very important to me about time and energy and how much we waste time and energy on just focusing on things we cannot control, especially future results and future actions. So staying present and just bringing your mind back to the present and saying that, let me focus on the now is very important. So my takeaway is to stay more focused in the now and not worry so much about the future.
Yeah. So just on the future, right? There is a part of future that requires planning. So planning also exists in the future. But what we tend to do is after we make a plan, we continue worrying about it. And we continue worrying about how it will play out and what will happen. That is that tamasic dhriti. That you're no longer in the present to focus on your action. Right? Yeah.
I can go next. So my takeaway is to, how to stay focused and stay in the present is to read scriptures and worship meditation, navjap, and swadhyay. So, when you keep doing those, you will try to stay in the present, and you can keep focusing on what is the righteous action, without focusing on the results of the righteous of the action that we do.
Yeah. Thank you.
I can go next. For me, in knowing your duty at any point of time, your intellect, that would be for me the key takeaway, and understanding that I'm not able to see it as to clearly see what is my duty at any point of time. The yardstick would be that I have all kinds of negative feelings like fear, anxiety, indecisiveness. And to overcome that, probably that's the yardstick that intellect is slipping down. So probably, and as for it said that scriptures, and at that point refer back to the scriptures and even ask for help from somebody, and then get back to understanding what exactly is the duty at that point of time. Probably that would be my takeaway for today.
Thank you.
I'll go next. My takeaway is staying in the present now, the good form of energy, which means the not the sattvic and energy in the sattvic way of energy, not the fortitude energy, which means the energy you said, the example of running also, you need energy, you have to go through a lot. That is also energy, but the energy should be in the right way. The energy should be, you have to use it in the right way, right? Like you need energy, but how you're using it is very important in the present. Like every situations, the fortitude and the intellect, how you handle the energy through the situation is very important. So my takeaway is in the present, the right energy and time, use it in the right direction.
Yeah.
I can go next. At any given moment, we have a choice to take. If the intellect is strong and sharp, then like the choice to move, the choice what we are taking at that moment, intellect help with that. And also the for the driti, just do that, take the choice and do the duty in a very correct manner with the right purpose. That is where driti helps. And we can see when we are doing the duty, when we are fulfilled, when we feel fulfilled, we are in a sattvic kind of a, like driti we are taking. And if we feel drained, then we are in a rajasic state of a driti, what we have taken, because BVGP is controlling that driti, what we have taken at that moment. And if we are in no energy level, then we are in total tamas, because what the decision, the choice itself, it's not clear. And also the focus, what we are putting with the sincerity is not clear. So we are clouded, deluded. So we can differentiate what kind of a choice we took and go back and kind of like, rectify it using these feelings.
Perfect.
And knowing the time and the energy is limited for all of us. And every moment is very important, how we are saving that energy and using the time. So that is my takeaway. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I can go next. So the shloka where we were talking about Rajasic performer, right? The starting point of a Rajasic performer is desire, where the actions are based on likes and dislikes. And everything else will be where we talked about there, like um there's no contentment, and then we are happy when there's success and sad when we see failure. That all these things feel quite natural, that we feel happiness in success, all those things. So yeah, moving away from these rajasic things and being a sattvic performer, doing duty without attachment to likes and dislikes and the outcome, whether it's going to be success or failure, and equipoise. Let even if it's success, I'm okay. Even if it's failure, I'm okay. Yeah, that is my takeaway.
Yeah. It sounds very theoretic, but all of us have experienced sattvic dhriti and sattvic performance whenever we have participated in any hobby of ours, whether it's sport, whether it's music, whether it's dance, because all of us have failed. All of us have lost. And we all have failed and lost matches without losing our cool. And when you do these hobbies, I can almost guarantee at the end of it, you're more energized than you were in the beginning. Right? And that's when you know that you're doing a particular action with sattvic, as a sattvic performer with sattvic dhriti. And I think that's the theme that everyone's talking about. So I wanted to give you a positive example, not just a negative one.
Yeah, I think I'll reiterate what I missed part of the session, but I'll reiterate what everybody has been saying. It's more about we have only limited time and energy, and we need to be present in the moment while we are doing it. And this fortitude is very important, because to go through the very VVGPs in your life, you can only go through it with the right amount of fortitude, which is like the right amount of acceptance of the situation. And how do you do it is with all the three aspects of our life, where we have the rajasic, tamasic, and the sattvic aspects. So I have been contemplating about fortitude, and I think it was very interesting to hear all this, that how to keep your fortitude going strong throughout, because a lot of time you slip, and then these kind of knowledge comes very handy to keep your fortitude up through all the BVGPs.
Yeah. So building fortitude, we also talked about it, right? Building fortitude is by directing your mind to the scriptures, by doing satsang, by doing bhajan, by doing nam jap, by doing meditation, These are all activities that will strengthen sattvic fortitude. Because when you have to do the right thing, right, you would have that muscle built to follow doing it. Right now, I say, oh, you should come and do bhajan, you might be like, ah, मुझे नहीं पसंद है, मैं नहीं आऊंगा. बस आपका राजसिक fortitude आ गया, उसको strengthen कर लो फिर. Right? That's why these anushtans, that's why these puja, they sound very like really big, daunting. They're meant to be. Without that, you'll not be able to break your Rajasic fortitude. If it was only 1 minute a day, then it's not building any muscle. The only muscle that gets built when it gets built with that fortitude of doing the right thing. And we all know doing anything towards our scriptures and these principles, no matter what effort we make, is the right thing. So it's all about going in that direction. Okay, great. Kavita, if you can do closing shlokas, that would be great.
ॐ सर्वेषां स्वस्तिर्भवतु, सर्वेषां शान्तिर्भवतु, सर्वेषां पूर्णं भवतु, सर्वेषां मङ्गलं भवतु. ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. ॐ सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः, सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः, सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु, मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्. ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. ॐ असतो मा सद्गमय, तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय, मृत्योर्मार् अमृतं गमय. ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते, पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते. ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. ॐ ॐ ॐ
Narayan, Narayan, everyone.
Narayan, Narayan. Thank you.
Narayan, Narayan.
Narayan.
Thank you, Narayan, Narayan.
Narayan, Narayan.
Narayan, Narayan.
मैं कुछ नहीं कर रही हूँ